My wife, Alice, and I have been together for 9 years, married for 7. Before getting married, we had a discussion about my unhappiness with her partying nature. During that conversation, Alice told me, "Don't take this the wrong way, but Chase, her then boyfriend and now husband of her former roommate, Dina, would be a better partner for her." This was a real gut punch in many ways. I guess because Chase would stay out late drinking and partying most nights of the week, Alice thought that if she and Chase were a couple, he would be okay with her also staying out late drinking and partying. About 10 months ago, Chase approached Alice about doing sales consulting for his business. Alice already has her own business and does better than she ever did before, so the opportunity from Chase wasn't something we needed to keep the lights on, but every extra bit helps. I expressed my initial concerns to Alice. She tried to reassure me in different ways, similar to how she did when she first said he'd be a better partner for her. Chase was a bro, partied too much, was too loud, etc. While I know Chase and I are different people, and I'm never going to be like Chase, I don't care because I'm happy with myself. However, it still eats me up when I think about the person I was set to marry, now married with amazing kids, comparing me to someone that I would ordinarily feel indifferent towards and now don't care for. For some added background on Chase and Dina, they started dating after me and Alice. Dina wanted to settle down like us and met Chase through an app. He was non-exclusive with Dina and only hooking up, eventually giving her a mild but untreatable STD. This caused Dina to become somewhat depressed since she would have to disclose this to any potential partners for the rest of her life. After a few months, Dina decided that instead of trying to date someone new and accepting, she was going to give Chase everything he wanted, and overlook all his previous sketchiness and partying so they could have a future together. Alice knew all this and knew Dina was sad and depressed and had ultimately given up some of her standards because Chase gave her an STD. For Alice to then turn around and say, "That's the better partner for her," seemed ludicrous and completely insensitive. Alice and I worked through it back then, and one of the biggest reasons I was able to forgive her was because Alice and Chase had minimal interaction the 2 or 3 times a year we saw him and Dina. Additionally, Alice and I planned on moving closer to family, which would create even more distance. Enter the opportunity mentioned above. I only catch the occasional correspondence between Alice and Chase through a shared business email Alice has, where I help out with business filings and taxes. The messages are friendly in nature, much friendlier than I've ever messaged people since meeting Alice. Alice then deletes only the correspondence from Chase from the inbox. Alice talks to Chase about 20 times more than she talks to Dina these days, with lots of laughing and joking around. Chase sends Alice pictures of the cool outings he does since he owns his business. Chase occasionally calls on the weekend or after hours, and while Alice says he should respect her off time, she often calls him back after a few minutes. Chase sends the occasional message excusing his partying for the typos in his messages. There's the accidental autocorrect where Alice suggests we go visit Dina and Chase. There are the couple of times while spooning when Alice has brought Chase up. There's the time when mentioning Dina's birthday, and because there's more than one friend named Dina, Alice clarifies it's the one married to Chase, instead of using Dina's last name or referring to her as her old roommate. Alice has mentioned that our kids and Dina and Chase's kids are about the same age and that we should visit them sometime soon, despite them living halfway across the country. Alice acts sad when she hears from Chase that Dina is pregnant again. Because Alice and my kids have birthdays close together, Chase asks what we've been doing in that same month of the year leading up to our kids' births. All this stuff adds up to give me the ick. I've tried reasoning with Alice about the sales she's making and sending 50% to Chase, explaining that she could have all of it if she started her own similar business. I've pointed out that Alice's own business is growing and will become much busier and more lucrative later this year and carry into the next. I've asked Alice to keep her relationship with Chase professional, but she gets defensive, insisting it's okay for her to develop a friendship with this guy, her former roommate's husband, the better partner. Then she'll act all angry and animated, saying she's emailing Chase right now to stop working with him. I tell Alice that all I want is for her to have appropriate boundaries with Chase and to be as transparent as she can. This gets her to act normal for a few days, but then it seems to start again. I'm not sure what else I'm supposed to say or do to have Alice act differently towards Chase. Sometimes, I think all I can do is focus on myself, the kids, and my work. Update 1. Only got a single response to my original post and there's a link below. Updating mostly to get my thoughts out. I sat with everything for a bit, and then this Monday, things got very heated. Alice makes her own hours since she has a growing work-from-home business and does consulting with Chase as well. Late Monday morning, Alice came back from the gym and got into a nice dress. I asked her what meetings she had since she typically only dressed up for big meetings with interesting people. For unimportant meetings, she often stayed in casual clothes, so being dressed up was an event. Unbeknownst to me, this was triggering to Alice as a woman. Over the last couple of months, Alice would occasionally put on makeup or a nice dress, and my asking her about it was something she very much didn't like but never communicated to me. For context, on average, Alice gets dressed up and puts on makeup maybe once a week. Additionally, I also work from home doing very boring stuff, so I am very interested in her meetings with cool people and cool products since I don't have much else going on. That night, as I was cooking, Alice mentioned something about being my girlfriend, which I didn't find funny and went back to cooking. Humor is subjective, and I just wasn't in the mood. She wanted me to tell her what was wrong, saying she had an idea of what was wrong, and then she started talking loudly that it was just a joke. She began yelling at me asking her questions when she gets dressed up and puts on makeup about who she's meeting with or where she's going comes across as searching for something, and she didn't like it. Okay, fair enough. I told her I wouldn't be searching if she would be more open and communicative with me. We delayed the full heated conversation until later when the kids were in bed. I had told her from the very beginning that I was uncomfortable with her working with Chase, but that we could definitely use the money. As long as she could make me comfortable with the situation, I was on board. I thought that was a mature, non-controlling way to ask Alice to give me reassurance. However, Alice has not made me comfortable with the situation. I also didn't expect their work to last as long as it has. I expected a few months, but due to changing demands, it looks like it might go on for 2 years. The argument was wide-ranging, and Alice was most mad about me searching. I mentioned many times in many ways that I'd asked her to over-communicate, which I should have specified to her that I primarily wanted her to over-communicate her dealings with Chase. She wouldn't tell me hardly anything about their communication. So, I'd ask, and she'd tell me what was going on with the situation, but never their communication. By me asking, she said that she took it that I was okay with everything, but I had to ask because she wasn't telling me anything. From the start, I asked that she make me comfortable with it, and she never did. I'd known that Chase and Alice were on friendly terms from overhearing the occasional phone call and meeting, joking around about stuff, and weekend plans. They'd share some pics of the kids doing things, and Chase would mention the cool things he's doing since he also owns his own business and makes his own hours. I'd asked Alice if she was now friends with Chase, since he was always just Dina's husband before, and she said many times that she's a friendly person and that's why she's good at her job. So, that was a deflection. I then asked how often she's chatting and communicating with Chase and how often she's communicating with Dina. She admitted to very little communication with Dina, maybe 5% or 10% of her interaction with Chase. I pointed out that it sounds like she's becoming friends with the person she told me would be a better partner for her, more so than her actual friend. Alice tried to revise history by saying she meant Chase would be a better boyfriend and someone to party with and that I'd be a better husband and life partner. Alice had said that before, but it was a while later when we were in couples therapy after she reflected on how bad and hurtful what she said was. She thought that would make me feel better then, and I told her it didn't, and she thought it would make me feel better now, and I told her it still didn't. I mentioned to Alice that she wasn't setting boundaries with Chase, such as when she'll answer calls, texts, messages, and emails. For example, Alice and Chase were supposed to get an update from a client on a Friday evening, which is already kind of imposing. Alice showed up, but Chase and the client didn't. The next day, Chase called Alice when our family was hanging out and having a fun time. Alice said she wouldn't answer because it wasn't respectful of her time, but then 5 minutes later, she said she was really curious about what was going on, so she left family time to call Chase. I asked her 3 or 4 times realistically, how many couples out of 10, or out of 100, did she truly think would still be together if another partner said what Alice said to me? Alice never answered and instead deflected by saying, well, why did you forgive me? Alice told me how she disliked Chase and the type of person he is, even though she suggested visiting Dina and Chase before. I told Alice not to tell me that she doesn't like him, but to show me. Alice said she's so frazzled, which I often reply is why she overcommits us all to so many activities, and that's why she doesn't overcommunicate with me. I asked with the increase in her main business and the busy season coming up, how she expected to deal with it all. She said she didn't know. I suggested she could stop consulting. Alice said she'd have to stop consulting since her business is about to get crazy, so she'll end her consulting in a couple of months. That's where we're at now. I know that outside of this, Alice and I are in a decent but not great place. I'm hopeful, but then I read a comment saying, if your spouse says I am uncomfortable with this, and you shrug and continue to do it, your marriage is over, and that really hit me. I hope that's not the case. Relevant comment. What Alice is doing is gaslighting you. She's trying to get you to doubt your own sanity by suggesting that your perfectly understandable reaction to her deeply sketchy behavior, her outrageous statement, and her evasive treatment of your attempt to untangle this is itself the problem. You should frankly tell her that you're done being manipulated by her, and you're done being her safe option. Tell her to pack her things and get out of your house. If she wants a continuing relationship with you, she's now applying for the job. Ops response. See, I initially didn't think there was gaslighting. I thought there were clear boundaries and requests for what I needed to be comfortable with the situation. When I brought things up and asked Alice to communicate, she'd say, what do you think I'm doing? And I'd respond that I think the boundaries I expressed are being crossed and that she's becoming friends with this guy she once said would be a better partner. I really think Alice has this ingrained view that she is a good person and therefore only does good things. Any questioning of actions contrary to that feels like an attack on her character, which is hard to talk through and deal with. Baru commenter. I guess Op will finally find out once he gets the STD Chase is giving out to people.